Hello everybody, this is Tim Brooks with the Ultimate Selling Team, and welcome to today's training, the 4-step buyer process. Today's training is the most important training you're going to receive if you're a new buyer's agent on our team. This training is going to allow you to completely dominate our market in the shortest amount of time possible, so I want you to watch it, rewatch it again as needed, and watch it over and over again until you have it down, so that we can completely dominate like Conan. Yes, the blood of our enemies. Crush our enemies, see them driven before us, and hear the lamentations of their women. If you haven't seen the Conan the Barbarian movies, you might not get that. But what you will get after this training is how incredibly simple yet effective this 4-step method truly is. The 4 steps in our method are 1. Prospect and convert the client. 2. Have the lender qualify the client. 3. The home search and showings for your client. And finally, 4. Submit the offer, negotiate the terms. As we go through each of these sections, we're going to do an overview of each step, and then we're going to break it down into its individual components with the forms that you're going to need to use. Step 1 is the most critical part of this entire 4-part process. It's also the part of the process that inexperienced and new agents are the most tempted to cheat on and skip these individual little steps. But I have to caution you, please do not do that no matter how tempted you are, because these smaller sub-steps are critical for steps further down the road and to set up your success in future steps. So we're just going to go through these real quick. For step 1, we've got the initial buyer script, then we have the buyer interview, and under that is setting a showing date, try to conference in the lender, and then finally send the important items to the buyer. You're going to send an email to the client including the video presentation, your buyer presentation, and a link to the lender, as well as you're going to send a completed buyer agreement via our online electronic signature system .loop. Now all of these steps are actually going to happen in a sequence within the first phone call to the buyer. Now to make it easy for everybody, we've included this buyer process checklist so you can actually check off each portion of this buyer process as you go through it. Now you're expected to have one of these buyer process checklists for each and every file that you have, and you're going to initial as you've checked off each little section to include putting in there setting the showing date. Alright, so step 1 here, prospecting and converting the client. Let's start with the first part of step 1, which is the initial buyer script. This is where it all starts, so you have to make sure you do your script practice every day and a good job internalizing this so you don't have to use as much bandwidth in reading your script and more reading the client and delivering the lines of this script as if you are a Hollywood actor or actress. So let's get to it. Hi, is this Mr. or Mrs. Buyer by chance? Hi, this is Tim with the Ultimate Selling Team at Keller Williams Realty. I know you weren't expecting the call, so I'll be really brief. Earlier, you had just registered on ultimatesellingteam.com to look at some homes in the area. I typically take a few moments to set up an auto alert to notify you when new listings come up in the areas and price ranges you're looking for. Because there are so many thousands of homes on the market, I figured I'd give you a quick call to see if I could help you narrow that list down a little so you're only getting notified about the really nice ones. What were you trying to find? Now it's important right there, if you notice, that we're saying we want to narrow it down so you're only getting the ones you were looking for. Otherwise, they're going to say they're not interested or whatever, but as soon as you mention, yeah, that way we don't send you a bunch of stuff you don't want, you would be amazed at how much that line opens them right up to telling you exactly what they do want. And that's important. That's the key there with that whole paragraph, is to keep them on the phone, get them interested a little bit, and get them talking to you about what they were in fact looking for. So on to the next paragraph there, and this is the transition portion here. If you can keep them on the phone from the first paragraph to the second, then you have got them. Now 99% of the, well, not 99, we'll say 70% of the time, they're going to tell you that they're not looking. And the next paragraph pulls them right in. Just looking, we're not ready yet, which is going to be most of your people. Okay. That's fine. Most of the folks I speak with through the website are anywhere from 6 to 18 months out. Because that's where you're at, I'll just set up your search on autopilot and let it run without getting too involved. You can always contact me later when you want something more. What sort of homes would you rather not have sent to you? The second they answer that question, you are in like Flynn. Then you're going to go into some qualifying questions, and you have successfully bypassed their natural resistance. Because even if they were interested in buying tomorrow, you're some random person, so they're automatically not going to open up to you unless you skillfully use that script. And once you can get past paragraph 2, you're in, you're all the way home at this point. So now it's time to ask them the qualifying questions. We're going to find out what their ideal time frame is, and then we're going to start solving some problems for them. That's what real estate really is solving problems for our clients. Okay, qualifying questions. And this may as well actually say conversation, and that's what's so important here. We're about to get in a conversation with our clients about exactly what they want. Okay, so tell me a little bit about the house you'd like to buy. Do you live in the area? Do you currently own a home, or are you renting? Have you seen any homes you like yet? And if so, which ones? If you find the home you want, what is your ideal time frame? And once they answer those questions right there, you have so much information that we can now start to really get into helping them get what they want in the time frame that they want it. So we're going to move along. We're going to close the call and ask for the appointment. Okay, fortunately, in order to get you one step closer to reaching your goal of finding the perfect home, all we have to do is have a quick conversation about your preferences to help me find the perfect home for you. Based on our conversation and your requirements, I'm going to pull up the multiple listing service and pull all of the properties that fit your specific criteria, so you don't have to waste any more time or gas driving around looking at properties that don't fit what you're looking for. Now you see, all of a sudden, you're sounding a little bit more valuable than you sounded about 20 seconds earlier. So you've captured their attention. You've kept them on the phone and with a slight interest, but now you're making proposals, saving them time, gas. You're sounding like you know what you're talking about. You're about to be real helpful finding them the perfect property. So now you're starting to stack up a little bit of value. However, this next paragraph is what really pulls them in to the jewel that's going to really put your hooks into these buyers, where they are never going to want to deal with anyone else again through this process, just based on the nature of what you're about to do with them. Okay, now we are going to go into the pre-buyer interview. If you have a second, let's go over your buying criteria right now. Once we are done today, I'm going to send you a list of properties. I want you to narrow the list down to the 10 best homes. I then want you to further narrow the list down to the top 5. Of those, we will look at the top 3 first. That way you know you're looking at the best properties first. If we can find the right property, when would you like to go see some houses? Perfect. Okay, now a couple things happen right there that I'm not sure if you're aware of or not, but I want to show you what those are. So if you have a second, let's go over that buying criteria right now. That means we're going to go right into this buyer interview. And the buyer interview is what puts your hooks in them. It's about 15 minutes long, and you will know every single detail after you're done with it of exactly what they're looking for. You're going to ask them questions that they had never even thought of before, so they're going to be revealing to you things that no one's ever asked them, that they haven't thought about, but now they're thinking about, so you're going to have intimate knowledge of what their perfect home looks like, and you'll be the only person to have that knowledge. Therefore, you're armed to go out and do the best possible search. So then also you're saying, I want you to narrow the list down to the 10 best homes, and that's the 10-5-3 rule that we do. Now the purpose of that is to get them really focused in on properties, but it's also designed to make sure that you're only taking them out to look at properties once maybe twice at the maximum, because they know that they're looking at the best homes first, so it's okay for them to put in an offer on day one. They don't have to see every piece of inventory on the market to know that they're making a good decision. Also, at the very end of that paragraph is where you're actually setting the date and time to go out and look at homes, assuming that you can find them the right property and assuming that they get qualified. Now that date, by setting it right there, you are creating a sense of urgency and a deadline for them to go to step 2, which is get qualified, narrow down their homes. So by setting an artificial deadline, it creates pressure to actually move forward on the sales line here of getting it done within a specific date and not dragging on. The longer it drags on, the more your chances of success diminish. So as you've seen, we've successfully now transitioned from the initial buyer script, which we are going to go back to when we're done, but now we've transitioned into part 2 of this, the buyer interview. Now we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this buyer interview itself. We're just going to go through maybe real quick and touch a couple highlights. Now, I do want you on page 1 to review the pre-qualification information one more time just to make sure that you are clear on it. And then on, say, page 2, I do want you to go through lifestyle. I do want you to ask those questions. It's very important, and people have probably never asked them that before, but that's also going to make you stand out like an expert. They're going to be surprised that you're asking those type of questions, but in the end it's going to make sense to them, and they're going to think, wow, this person really does get what I'm after, and they really are going to find me the perfect home that's going to fit more than just the generic how many beds and baths do you want. Now on to page 3, the general things that they want in the house, the structure and all of that. Now pay attention to that and write these answers down as you're going through it so that you can do a good search when you're going through the MLS. Then of course the next page, the interior, beds, baths, kitchens and all of that kind of stuff. Dining room, living room on the next page. Now most importantly, on the last page at the very bottom of it where it says summary, this is actually critical to find out information that you otherwise would not know, that they may not volunteer to you because they're not aware of it. And if you do a good job in these summary questions, it'll keep you from having to go out showing them properties 3, 4, and 5 times. These summary questions are where you're going to find out these little gems of info that you can learn the easy way rather than the hard way, learning it while you're out at houses and them telling you what they don't want as they see it, because then they're aware and they didn't really know before. So it's not that they're just giving you a hard time, it's that they never really thought of it before. Unless you can figure it out in the summary, those questions there, those are really good, powerful questions so you can dial them in on the right properties from day one. Trust me, it's powerful. Do a good job there, and they will be completely entrusting you with their housing needs. Okay, so now that we're done with the buyer interview, they've been pretty compliant. They've been on the phone with you now for about 15 minutes and they've told you all of their hopes and desires for their property. So now we're getting ready to try and conference them in with the lender. So to do this, we're going to go back to our buyer script and then we're going to try and move them forward to, as you can see here, try to conference with lender. Okay, getting back into the script, we've just done the buyer interview. Now we're going to go to the post-buyer interview. The next step is for me to send out our must-see buyer presentation video. It's important that you watch this in its entirety so you'll be well prepared for what to expect as we go through the entire buying process. It'll also be important for you to speak to the lender and get pre-approved so we know exactly what price range to search in, and also so we can submit an offer if we find a property you like. All listing agents require a pre-approval to be submitted with any offers. Our lender can have you pre-approved in about 30 minutes after a quick 5-minute phone conversation. I usually like to conference them in so we can take care of that real quick. As soon as we're done, I'll send you a list of the properties to review. Let's see if we can get the lender on the phone real quick. Do you have a second? Then we're going to conference in with this lender. Now let's go back through and break down this paragraph because there are a number of things happening in here that move the ball forward that I want to explain why it's in there. So as you can see here, the next step is for me to send you our must-see buyer presentation video. It's important that you watch this in its entirety so you'll be well prepared for what to expect as we go through the entire buying process. Now, in that buyer video, that's actually our full buyer presentation, where we go over our value add proposition, how much we negotiate off the average list price, what makes us so valuable, why the buyer agreement is important, and what the process is as far as appraisals and inspections, everything that they're going to need to know. If they don't watch that video, it makes it harder for you once you're showing them homes to lock them onto one house quickly. What I really want to do is make your time as efficient as possible so that they feel okay putting an offer in one of the first 3 properties that you show them and feel really good about the representation they're getting from us. So that video is actually what sells them on that. You're already looking like a real pro at this point, but it's the video that solidifies them in the future as we're negotiating and putting offers in, etc. Okay, moving along to the next sentence there. It will also be important for you to speak to the lender and get pre-approved so we know what price range to search in, and also so we can submit an offer if we find a property you like. All listing agents require a pre-approval be submitted with any offers. So that lets them know, rather than, hey, let's go look at properties now and then we'll get pre-approved once we find something. It doesn't work that way with us. We don't show anybody anything without a pre-approval because we want to know that they're qualified, that we're searching in the right price range for them, and that they are in fact a qualified buyer. I do not want you spending 1 minute of time out showing properties to an unqualified buyer. It's not fair to you, and it's also not fair to them, because they may fall in love with something that they really like and then don't have the ability to buy that. So that's a very awful thing. We're doing them a service by making sure that they're pre-approved up front. So then moving forward with that, we want them to get pre-approved quickly, but also we've found that whenever we let the buyer off the phone and set them up to call the lender on their own, or we have our lender try to call them, that was a point where a lot of our potential buyers were slipping through the cracks, and then we were never hearing from them again. And who knows why? It may be that they were nervous that they may not qualify, or some other reason that they didn't want to do it right then. So when they speak to the lender and get qualified, they may have told you earlier in this conversation that they were still 12 months away or 9 months away from going out and searching homes. But once the lender actually comes back and pre-approves them with a number, it is like getting a new credit card in the mail. They cannot wait to go spend it, and guess what? What was an 18-month out buyer or a 12-month out buyer just became a next week buyer. It happens all the time. So that's why this script is designed to push them that way. Alright, so our lender can have you pre-approved in about 30 minutes after a quick 5-minute phone conversation. That lets them know that this is a quick process and it will only take 5 minutes of their time, and within 30 minutes you can be searching for properties for them, and it'll be great and fun. Then the next sentence there, I usually like to conference them in so we can take care of it real quick. Again, we added that in there so that on your phone you simply add in our lenders, and our lenders know to expect this between the hours of 9 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. every day, because they know that's when we're prospecting, so they become accustomed and they have scripts to deal with it for us conferencing them in, and then you just simply mute yourself out while your buyer talks to the lender, and then the lender can manually process that pre-approval right away. And then you're again at the end of that getting them pumped up and excited. As soon as we're done, I'll send you the list of properties to review. See, so you're not sending them what they want up front. As soon as you're done, I'll send this to you, which is what they want. So that just entices them further to, okay, let's do it right now. Then the last sentence there, let's see if we can get the lender on the phone real quick, just so they know it'll be fast. Do you have a second? That whole paragraph is to get that lender on the phone and transition. Again, that will save you and make you so much money by being really effective at getting that lender on the line with them at the same time. so that you're not spending a lot of time with unqualified buyers waiting to pre-approve them, and that you're not waiting for weeks for a buyer that just floated away and then decided to call their friend the realtor after you got them excited. So the next step then is going to be to conference them in with the lender. Now that we've conferenced in with the lender and we've completed that, now we're going to step 3, which is to transition into the items that we told them we were going to send them so that they're motivated and excited to complete those items. So to finish that and wrap up the whole conversation, we're going to go back to the script again. Once you watch the video, I can send over the buyer agreement, which makes you my client. And that's very important that they understand that, but it sounds so nice and easy. What day were you available to go see some homes? We're confirming. We're doing a lock close right here to confirm what they've already told us. So once again, what day are you available to go see some homes? Would that be Thursday, or was Saturday better for you? Again here, suggest a weekday and a weekend in case they legitimately are pressed for time. So all you're doing there is you're just summing up again. Hey, I'm going to send you this video. I'm going to send you the buyer agreement, so don't be surprised and freaked out that you get this buyer agreement, which makes you my client. After all this value you've added, that seems reasonable that we're sending over a buyer agreement to make them our client. What day are you available to go see some homes? That's just once again confirming what we saw earlier so that they don't flake on us. And then finally, the instructions at the bottom, we're going to send out our mandatory buyer video and our buyer agreement at this point, and that's it. You end the conversation, you're done. That is the conclusion of step 1 once we actually send out our agreements, which we're going to go over here right now. Okay, now once you've completed and concluded your call, you're going to go into the Boomtown account that you're in right now with them, and you're going to select the actual buyer presentation email. It's already templated and completed for you. You're just going to select it and send it to them. And basically this is just what it looks like in there. It just reminds them of what you talked about already. The video is actually embedded in the email, which is cool. It makes it more likely they're going to click on it. And then there's also a bonus video in there on the 6 steps to buying a home, to give them a nice, quick, easy overview of the process. A lot of times fear is what causes people not to continue in the process. So a lot of this stuff is designed to ease their fears, make it as hassle-free as possible, and make it easy to work with us. Ease is the key. Okay, and then it also lets them know also that your time's valuable, that you put a lot of time and energy invested into making sure that it's a good use of their time for the properties that we're looking for. So it just kind of sets their expectations up front. It also includes a link to the lender in there, so if for some reason we weren't able to conference the lender in, there's a nice easy link to the pre-approval page of our preferred lenders right there on the spot, and just sets their expectations nice and easy. And then beyond that, we have the buyer agreement itself that we're going to create in .loop and just send it to them. Now we've done the best we can through our script, the buyer interview, and all of the value add things that you've said to them makes it a very simple and easy logical conclusion that they want to be your client and that you're going to be the most helpful person for them to get what they want when they want it. Again, we're going to be the problem solvers for them, so getting a buyer agreement in that environment is easy. There's a saying that I had learned from Adam Hergenrother, actually, that told me that getting things, it's only a problem to get things signed in the absence of value. So that's why everything we do is just stacking value on top of value for our wonderful clients. And with that, that is the end of step 1. The rest of the steps go much faster and are much smoother. So the next step, step 2, is going to be qualifying the buyer. So now that you've completed step 1, you are almost all the way home. If you've gotten through step 1 and you've gotten them to the lender, that is as good as your client right there. You're almost there. Now you just have to extract the gold. You've gotten the dirt out of the ground. Now you just have to run it through the box. So there's just 3 quick parts to the qualify phase. 1, conference the buyer with the lender, which you probably did already as part of step 1. However, step 2, if you were unable to get that lender on the phone, or if the buyer was unable to conference or didn't have the time, now you've got a little bit more of a job cut out for you. So if there was no conference call with the lender, contact the lender and give the client info to the lender. Ask that that lender immediately return the call to the buyer. Also give the lender's info to the buyer so they also can reach out. And then finally, you want to follow up relentlessly with that lender on the status of that pre-approval until you get that pre-approval letter. That pre-approval letter is critical. You cannot go out and show properties without that letter. And that's the end of step 2. Alright, so we've made it through step 1, prospecting, converting the client, step 2, qualifying, and we're at step 3. And actually step 3 is going to occur simultaneously while the lender is qualifying the buyer usually. So we're going to do a quick run through of these. With step 3, part 1, if you're using a showing assistant, the showing assistant has to do a buyer interview just like you did in step 1. The showing assistant has to know what that buyer's looking for just like you do. And also, as part of that showing assistant transition, you've got to send the showing assistant introductory template email so that it explains to the buyer who the showing assistant is and how that system works so that they're okay with the transition. And then part 2, you're going to do a good MLS search, and then you're going to set them up on an auto email that sends them any brand new properties coming on the market that match their criteria as they come out. Then part 3, we're going to do the 10-5-3, and that just means that, like in your initial script that you told them, they're going to choose 10 properties from the list that you sent them. They're going to then narrow that down to 5 and then 3. We're going to look at the top 3 first, and then part 4 of step 3, you're going to set up the showings for those top 3. So now let's break that down a little bit further. Okay, so here's a copy of the transition email that we use to explain how the team operates, and basically it lets them know how you operate as the buyer agent, what your roles are, and then it also goes into the showing assistant, what they are, what their roles are, and then finally the transaction coordinator or our executive assistant and what their role is in the contract to close portion of the file. This way, as we're handing them off back and forth between our team members, it doesn't feel disjointed and they're not unsure of what everybody's role is. So if you're using a showing assistant, you absolutely need to let them know how that process works so it ensures a smooth handoff to your showing assistant. One other thing too, when it comes to showing assistants and using them, you have to make sure that you do a good job teeing up your client so that they're ready to go for your showing assistant. You don't want to hand them a bunch of junk that's only half qualified and not very motivated. Now our next step is going to be our MLS search and then setting them up on the auto email. So we're going to go into MRIS and we're going to plug in the search criteria that they said was important to them. Make sure to pay attention to the summary and the things that were absolute must-haves, and then the other things that are maybe want-to-haves. However, you don't want to set up your actual search too rigidly. I like to set up a very loose search based on beds, baths, square foot, and maybe the area, and then I like to manually go through and select properties that I think they're going to like based on their search criteria. And then, once you've done that, then go to the bottom of the of your list of properties there, hit save, and from there you're going to see the tab for auto email. So this way they're going to get set up on an auto email, so every time a property comes on the market that wasn't previously listed that matches their criteria, it will send it to them immediately. And that's going to be important, especially as we get into with the tight inventory that we have right now. And then that brings us to our top 10, 5, 3, and setting up the showings for those top 3. Now, this is extremely important for saving you time down the road. We've all heard the nightmare stories of that agent who was so proud that she took her clients out 45 times. I actually heard that before, and that agent thought that they were really doing a service for their client. Boy, I bet that client probably didn't think so, and I bet they were exhausted. So, take your list as it comes out through the MLS, and as you've narrowed it down a little bit, take out the junk, send it to them, and then give them the homework of narrowing that list, if it's a large list, down to the top 10. They'll enjoy it and they'll think that it's fun. And instruct them to narrow that down to the top 5 of that top 10. And of the top 5, let them know we're going to look at the top 3 first, and then we can look at the other 2 if you don't like those. And finally, set up the showings for those top 3. This is important because it allows them to put in an offer on the first day, because they know that they're looking at the best properties first. So to summarize step 3, we're going to do our buyer interview again if you're using a showing assistant, or I should say the showing assistant's going to do the buyer interview. We're going to send the introductory email introducing who the team is and what their roles are. We're going to do a good MLS search, set them up on an auto email, and then finally we're going to do the top 10, 5, 3, and then set up showings for the top 3. And that's it for step 3. And finally, that brings us to step 4. And step 4 is very quick, very easy, very fast, and this is where you get paid off. So you've shown them the property, they found the one they love, and now what do? Well, there's 3 questions that you need to ask them at the property, and you can tell them, if they're not sure, have them think about it, and by the time they get home, let them know you're going to have a conversation with them, and you're going to want to know the earnest money deposit amount. Usually it's 1% of the property, but we can get away with less. Usually we can get away with like $1,000, $1,500 if it's under a $300,000 property, $300K to $400, maybe $2,000. So anyway, but just give them an idea that it's around 1% unless they have some kind of money issues, and then you can work with that. So we need to know the earnest money deposit amount. We need to know the offer price, and then we also need to know if there's any kind of seller contribution amount that they need to close the deal. You're going to find that out from the lender. Usually we can get up to around 3% of a seller contribution. And then finally, you're going to want to know the closing date. Try and go for 30 days if you can, unless it's FHA or VA, and then we're going to do a 45-day closing for those. So that's it. Earnest money amount, offer price, seller contribution amount, closing date. Those are the things you need to know to put into the contract. Now the contract class is a different video, so watch that for all the details. But that's it. Earnest money deposit, offer price, and you're going to suggest an offer price to them based on where we need to end up. So you're really going to ask them, where do we want to end up as far as the price goes. After they've watched the buyer video, which they watched before, that sets them up to not want to ask for really way below market value offers or expectations in the current market that we're in, because it just isn't happening. So set them up with a realistic expectation, EMD, offer price, seller contribution amount, closing date, and that's it. Put that offer together. Try and put it together the night that you show them the properties. I like to do it immediately the same day while the juices are flowing and while the iron is hot. You need to strike. So put that offer together, send it out to the other agent, and put together a nice summary email summarizing the terms for the listing agent. There's nothing worse than being a listing agent, getting an offer, and then you have to sift through the whole thing to find out what the details are. So the summary email is just going to have the same terms: the purchase price, closing date, deposit amount, and any sort of contingencies if there are any in there. And that is it. Now, just to summarize, and I know it seems like we covered a lot here, but when we really just kind of break it down into its essence, it's just these 4 simple steps: prospect, convert the client, qualify the client, the home search and showing, submit the offer, negotiate the offer. That is it. That is the Ultimate Selling Team amazing 4-step simple buyer process in a nutshell. Done. Boom. cash the check. The Ultimate Selling Team is dedicated as a team to each other's growth, success, and having massive lives. So on behalf of the entire team, I want to welcome you with open arms, and we look forward to creating massive lives together.